you own it. Let every mile bring a smile, yeah.
Welcome back to the Road of Life podcast with Craig Meredith. This week we're talking about navigating difficult conversations with your spouse, with anybody really, but specifically in a marriage with your spouse. They can sometimes feel like a bit of a minefield. Like, you know, you've got something you need to bring up, something you want to talk about. You know it's maybe not going to be the easiest conversation, and I think our human nature tendency is to shy away from it. Avoid it. For sure. It's uncomfortable. Let's just pretend like this is not a thing and we'll just sweep it under the rug and let's hope it never comes up again.
Yeah.
Which is the worst idea. It's the absolute 100% worst thing you can do.
Yeah.
And so how do we go about
having the conversation?
having those difficult conversations?
Well, I do think, to your point, because historically it's not something that I've ever really enjoyed.
Oh, I hate it.
And in previous relationships, I would avoid it like the plague, and ultimately it ended very poorly. Like it chips away at the foundation.
Yeah.
Puts up a wall between you.
For sure.
All of the metaphors that you can think of about distance between you and your spouse, it does that. And so I think
which is so insidious, right? Because you think it's the opposite.
Yeah.
You think you're keeping the distance out and staying close by not creating this conflict between you, but really it's the opposite.
Totally. And so I think that adopting the mindset of short-term pain, long-term gain is critical here. It's critical because, to your point, the tendency is like, short-term pain.
I'm out.
I don't want to, I'm gone. Yeah. I'm not interested in this.
Yeah.
But if you can push through that short-term discomfort, on the other side of that is growth, and it is better than the alternative.
Not only growth, it's closeness, closer connection. Like these difficult conversations are an opportunity to get closer instead of the trick your brain is playing on you, which makes it seem like the opposite.
Yeah, you get to grow together, for sure. Yeah, grow closer. Yeah.
And so let's just get really tactical and like literally walk someone through step by step how to set yourself up for as much success as you can in this difficult conversation. Okay.
So I think the first step is to make sure that it's the right time. Like, plan and make sure that your spouse isn't preoccupied with something else. They're not coming home from a pretty rough day. Something's going on in their life that has turned it into a little chaotic or something like that.
Their brain is completely consumed by something else right now.
Yeah.
And so piling something else onto a brain that's already in a little bit of chaos.
It doesn't set you up for success.
Yeah.
So as best you can, find a reasonable time. And that doesn't mean just put it off. There's never a good time. It's at some point we need to bite the bullet and deal with the issue. But there's usually a time when it's really not a good time to do it. Yeah. And so find a time when you can.
I think that's part of a bigger sort of preparation step. And so part of finding, an appropriate, not the right time, because there's never a perfect time, but finding a time when your spouse is receptive to a bigger conversation, not just a what are we having for supper conversation, but and flat out asking, like, I want to have
we need to talk. Do you have a good time? When's a good time to do this?
Yeah, like we need to have a bigger conversation about something. Like, let's plan a time.
Yeah.
But part of that preparation is also your own internal preparation on being super clear on what the conversation is about and what you want the outcome of the conversation to be. Not just coming into a conversation like guns blazing, like you got a bunch of grievances you want to air. It's what do you want the outcome of this conversation to be? And
to be clear, not what you want the outcome to be in other words, that you want it to come out a certain way. What we mean is that there's a resolution one way or the other. It doesn't necessarily mean it's the resolution that you're looking for. So knowing what you want the outcome to be, I want to come to resolution on something, not necessarily I want this to be the outcome or I want this to be the resolution. I want it to be my way. I think it's being open to the idea that you're looking to resolve a problem, but you're not looking for it to be this to be the exact solution.
Your solution is not the only solution. You're going to work together to find a solution.
Just trying to be clear on what we mean by that what you want the outcome to be.
Yeah, for sure. But what I meant by that was coming in with an idea of where you want this conversation to go. So you've got a bit of a plan for the conversation and not just shooting from the hip with all the things that you're frustrated by. And so part of that, so that's the preparation step. The next step is actually having the conversation. Once you've planned it and you've got the time set aside, you're both ready for this conversation. Next step is actually having the conversation. And there's a couple of tools or tactics that are really helpful in this situation. And the first one is to speak from yourself. Like, use I statements instead of you statements. It's not you do this, you do that, you never do this, you. That's going to be an ineffective way to engage this conversation. Using I statements is, I feel this way, I'm frustrated by this, I'm upset and worried by this, this makes me feel. So focus the conversation on you, the impact to whatever you're talking about, the impact of that thing on you specifically, as opposed to the you
what
game.
the other person's doing wrong.
Correct.
Yeah, no, totally agree. If you're looking to put up a wall and shut them out and turn this conversation into a monologue and have them tune you out completely, then point the finger and tell them all the things they're doing wrong. But if you're actually looking to engage in a conversation and come to a resolution, solve an issue, then absolutely speak from your heart, how it's impacting you, how you're feeling. And I think at the start, even that it might be contentious because maybe we don't have the skills yet. We haven't yet gotten to the point where we're able to accept constructive criticism. Sometimes we get heated and it feels like an attack. Oh, you feel this way and I made you feel that way. And so some people might get to a place where they still feel a little bit
defensive.
Yeah, exactly. And so this is a skill we're learning, we're building, and we're growing. So at the outset, when you're starting this process, it might still get a little bit contentious, but if we keep working through it, it gets better.
Right. And coupling this with the 200% marriage, the 100% responsibility mindset, when you're both working on that, that helps remove some blame and defensiveness from the situation.
Totally.
So it all kind of works together. The next thing you can do in these situations to keep it really constructive is to be very specific. I think the other trap that we tend to fall into as humans is like we hyperbolize things, like you always do this and you never do this and I'm always the one.
I've changed that crappy diaper every single time since that kid's been born.
Yeah. So
is that true?
Every single time?
Every single time.
Even if it is true, speaking in those extremities, in those giant generalities, and those giant hyperboles, is, even if it's true, is not effective in moving you forward in a productive conversation.
Yeah.
And so speaking in really specific instances, giving examples of a time when, as opposed to just throwing out the blanket statement of you always, you never type of thing.
Yeah. Again, another way to shut someone down. If you tell them how they're always missing the mark, how they're always wrong, how they're always failing you, that's a way to get them shut down.
Yeah, generalities just never work.
Not going to work. And then the last one?
Make it focused on solutions.
Yeah, the more you focus on, the more you get. So if you want solutions, then you have to focus on solutions. It's okay to bring up a problem so you identify it, you get clear on what the problem is, but then as soon as we're clear on what the problem is, we both know, we get it. The problem is this. Now, how do we transition to solutions and actually solve the problem? Because we don't want to live in the past. We don't want to live in problem land. We want to live in solution land. And that's how you get to an exponential relationship.
And when you're speaking about the solutions and when you're working through to find the solution together, speaking about what you want or what you need specifically in specifics, but also what you want, not what you don't want. Again, not focusing on the negative stuff, not focusing on what you don't want, focusing on what you want the solution to be, what you want the outcome to be, what you want or need coming out of this conversation in this relationship, as opposed to what you don't want.
Yeah, and I think focusing on solutions, you might not always agree on what the solution is. And so I think it's really important to find the seed of agreement. We've talked about this in other episodes. It's there's usually something, even if it's small, that you can attach to, that you can both agree on. And that's where you can start really to pull from to find a solution that works for both parties.
Yeah, when you can find that, whatever that tiny seed of agreement is, that one tiny thing you can find to have in common, that immediately puts you on the same team again.
Yeah.
As opposed to feeling like you're on opposite teams, that seed of agreement puts you on the same team. And, we've talked about it in the conflict resolution episode. Finding that seed of agreement requires active listening on both sides. And so you may have been the one who brought up the conversation and you have things you want to say. That does not mean your partner, your spouse doesn't also have things that they want to say. And when it's their turn to speak,
being open to hear that. You have to be, you're bringing up, we're assuming we're talking to someone who's bringing up the problem, but you also have to be willing to listen to the other side.
And not, like you said, not just listening to respond, but listening to actually understand their perspective so that you can find that seed of agreement, because that is where the solution will come from.
Yeah.
And so it can be tricky to engage in these.
And I think another thing that I have had to connect with over the years is letting your ego go a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, throughout my life, there's been times where you get into these discussions and it's like you take offense, your ego gets in the way, and you're not willing to let something go or get on the same side of the table with someone. I'm not wrong in this. I'm 100% right. And you can be right or you can be happy. Yeah. So it's one of those things where you can fight for being right and have your ego intact. Thank you.
Yeah.
Or you can tell that little bugger to pound sand and
be a little humble.
Yeah, and understand that it's not just about being right. It's about being happy and finding common ground and finding a solution that works for everybody. And so letting that ego go. And that's easier said than done. I get that. And it takes practice and it takes work.
It takes intention and awareness to even notice it at first. Because it's, for me too, it was a highly ingrained default reaction to, I am right. I'm always right. And so it takes that being willing to be open to feedback, being willing to step outside of yourself and see oh, I think I'm actually I think that's my ego responding. I think I'm more caught up in being right and that I didn't actually do that or whatever the case is. I'm more worried about being right than I am about finding a solution.
Yeah.
And that is going to be the fall that you fall into.
I've found the ego is more a pain in the butt than anything.
Yeah.
Really. Early days in my life, I thought it was helpful. It was more of a defense mechanism than anything really for me. But over time, I've realized that I don't have a whole lot of use for him. He comes around and he's more of a pain in the butt. He causes more trouble than he's worth. And so that little voice, naming it also helps. That there's Jack.
Jack was the one that was talking. I need to shut Jack up and kick him off the road.
Yeah, he's trying to sabotage me here a little bit. Keep me safe. Keep me where I feel better. It's not where you want to be.
No.
You want to grow
together,
and you want to improve your relationship. And so it's letting that relationship go with Jack, the ego, the one that's really probably got his claws in you. And it's not easy, but it's
necessary.
Absolutely worth it if you can do that work to identify that voice, identify that ego, and put them aside to really focus on what matters.
And so these conversations can be intimidating. I'm pretty conflict averse. I'm a very conflict averse human now. And I've gotten more that way generally as I've gotten older. I definitely avoid it more often than I ever did as a younger person. And so because I'm so conflict averse, I don't love these difficult conversations. I just don't. They're uncomfortable. I don't like conflict. I don't want anything to do with it. But going back to what we said at the beginning, that choosing to see these as an opportunity to grow closer together in your relationship, and whether that's your marriage or that's your friend or that's your business partner, it really does apply to any difficult conversation you have to have in your life at any time. And so choosing to see it through the lens of this is an opportunity for us to grow closer in our relationship, whatever that relationship may be.
Yeah.
And then just following the steps.
Yeah, I actually had a difficult conversation with a friend not that long ago.
That's right.
Yeah, it was a situation where there was some,
miscommunication on both sides.
Yeah, it was just weird. And I think both our egos got into it a little bit. And it was and we didn't take ownership of the relationship like we talk about 100%. responsibility for the relationship, and I think we were both more of that 50-50 mentality, and it was weird because, we're both in the personal growth space, and we both understand relationships and that we need to take 100% responsibility. But in this particular case, we both let our egos get in the way a little bit, and it caused us to lose a little bit of time bonding and being close. But enough is enough. We eventually just said, let's just
talk it out.
Let's just get to the bottom of this. And yeah, it was a difficult, weird, awkward conversation at first, but we've grown so much more as a result, and we're better friends now than we were before as a result of it. And so it really is true that it feels so crappy in the moment. Like, why am I going to have this conversation? Like, it's brutal. I don't want to have it. But when you do, you feel so much better because you've actually grown. Your friendship, your marriage, whatever it is actually strengthened by doing it.
Yeah.
And if we can just always keep that in front of mind, is like, yes, I get it. It sucks now, but on the other side of this, it's so much better. So 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 20 minutes, whatever that conversation length is of discomfort, for a lifetime of better.
And my guess is the most uncomfortable moment was right before the conversation started. It wasn't comfortable as soon as it started, but it's like our very first podcast episode. What's the antidote to fear and discomfort?
Do it.
Action. And so the worst you're ever going to feel is right before you open your mouth and have the conversation.
But it's also never going to be easier than now to do it. The longer you wait, the more the fear and the discomfort will have an opportunity to take over and allow you to not ever do it. So
And it ingrains habits even, you get more ingrained in the avoidance.
It will never be easier to start the process than it is right this moment. So if there's something that you have in a relationship, in a marriage, that you need to deal with, a conversation that needs to be had, an apology that needs to be made, whatever it is, now is the time. There's never going to be an easier moment than this very moment right now. So I think that's the takeaway for this conversation is if there's something lingering out there in one of your relationships, it may be a family member, a spouse, maybe it's a child, maybe it's a sister, a sibling, whatever it is, have that conversation. Pick up the phone, call them, go to their house, whatever it is, but have that conversation.
Your relationship with them is worth the 5 minutes of discomfort.
Yeah.
It just is. And you can do it.
Yeah.
You can get through the That was my biggest lesson of 2023 is I can do the hard thing.
Yeah.
You can do the hard thing too.
Yeah.
So thanks for joining us on this difficult conversation. And I know there's someone in your life that would also benefit from this conversation. And so share it with them, your spouse, your friend, your family member, whoever else needs to hear this conversation. Maybe it's the person you need to have the conversation with. Send this to them so that you're both ready.
It's a great idea.
Might break the ice a little bit.
Exactly. They know what's coming. You know what's coming.
Yeah.
Helps out a little bit.
Yeah. So I've started asking, what's the one thing you're going to change coming out based on this episode that you're going to do in your life? I think we just challenged you to do it. It's what's that outstanding conversation that you need to have?
Identify that person, send them the episode, then have the conversation. Boom. All right. Get to it. And we'll see you next week.
Bye for now.
Road of life, yes, you own it.